Hello, I think we're live. Good afternoon. It's Friday, 4 p.m. and I'm going live in Anxiety Free Life, my local hypnosis, and on our YouTube channel. And today's topic is how can I put past trauma behind me and finally move on with my life? And this was a really popular choice. So putting past trauma behind me and finally moving on with my life. And I might just get the live on my phone so I can see if there's anyone watching, any comments. Yep, that's beautiful. Can see that. That's awesome. Okay, hope you've had a great day so far today. And let's get into this content. Okay, past trauma, anxiety. Hey Tracy, past trauma and anxiety are hand in hand. So when we talk about anxiety, there has to be a sense that the unconscious mind believes I'm not safe. That's the cause of all anxiety. If your unconscious mind felt that you were safe, it wouldn't be flooding your body with adrenaline and cortisol and causing you to have that hypervigilant, overstimulated response when you know consciously that it's not needed or helpful. So putting trauma behind us, how do we do that? So instinctively, the first thing that we want to do when something's unpleasant is we want to block it out. And our unconscious mind actually has a function where it will repress stuff in order for us to survive in the short term. Like something's just too much to deal with, let's just shove it to the back of the cupboard and we won't deal with it right now. But at some point, as you know, you need to deal with stuff. And that's where, counselors and psychologists want to pick the bones out of it and spread it all out and, drag us through it over and over again. There are plenty of other ways in order to do it. But one thing that's for sure is that if we've got emotions, so let's just break down what happens in a trauma. So in a trauma, we have a situational event. There's different types of trauma for a start. I mean, you can have like an acute trauma, like one bad thing happened. It could be just one thing, you were going along in your life and then boom, this thing happened. That's got a start and a finish, and it's typically would be one event, or if not one, then not ongoing, frequent, multiple kind of things. So if you think about complex trauma, there can be distressing events, situations, abuse, neglect, abandonment. There can be like a whole stack, like a plethora of stuff that we can go through in life. And sometimes it's, at a time in our life where we've got like very little understanding of the world and who we are and what responsibilities, people or rights or expectations that we could have from the world, or even to know what's going on. So a lot of the time this stuff can affect our identity. Now, there's early childhood trauma that's like up to the age of 7, like when we're still in that really vulnerable imprint stage. So that's like a developmental trauma, and that can be very complicated because people may not even have true memories of these events. So they're walking around with the effects of the trauma, but not actually having like, yes, on this day this happened and this is the memory that I have it. So it's where your identity and your nervous system and your responses and all your programming are there from the trauma, but you don't actually have a clear memory of what happened, and maybe you've only been told like some stories of what happened. So, and then you've got chronic trauma, which is basically like where you're stuck in a situation where something happens over and over again and you can't get out. Now, the thing with trauma is the one commonality that they have is that in a situation where you're traumatized, you are experiencing powerlessness. So, and that can even be where people have a grief situation. It turns into like traumatic grief. And we won't go through like all the potential possibilities of what could be in our past, but it's just really important to know that there are different types of trauma that can happen at different points in our life, different times in our life. And they affect us differently, but they also can have the similar long-term effect. And in every situation, and I see this actually like with different people in different situations, it hurts to deal with stuff. It's not pleasant. We want to get as far away from those feelings as possible, because experiencing pain is unpleasant. So what happens in trauma is there's the cycle which says something's happening, I'm not safe, the unconscious releases the cortisol and adrenaline. That's got like a kind of anesthesia effect even. So you go into like a shock, and like I've read things where people have been in car accidents and they haven't experienced pain from all their injuries because of all this anesthetic stuff that's going on. It's the stuff where if you see like lions chasing deer or something, or buffalo, and it's to stop you feeling the pain if you're the one that's in the not so fortunate position. So there is a good thing there. But what happens is that when that loop goes through, and often in human interactional trauma, it's not the same as the kind of thing that I just described where like there's a lion or a car accident or something. It's where there's no loop closing. So the hippocampus can't convert that into a long-term memory and put it behind. So when we say put your past behind you, it's actually really accurate, because it hasn't been put into long-term memory. So if I'm thinking about, say for example, I think, when I went to the African lion safari when I was 5 years old, that's been put into long-term memory. And if I try and remember that, I can't access the details from it. I can remember like the prime bits. I remember I had a banana paddle pop and I really wanted a rainbow flavor, but I wasn't allowed. And like I just remember like some parts of it, but it's not like that they've proven by studying these things that the memories that you have in a traumatic event where the loop's not closed and it's not in long-term memory are quite different in the way that they're represented when we bring them up. They're very different. They can trigger emotion and so forth. So the first thing is that there's emotion. The emotion loop's not closed. There's still active emotion in there. We need to discharge that emotion, get that out, and put this into long-term memory. How do we do that? So the unconscious mind during a trauma has picked up some imprinting as well. So if something's happened, it's going to be not wanting this to repeat, or wanting to get you out of there, or maybe even just the fact that you're powerless or whatever. There's some programming that's gone on, because the unconscious learns through repetition, trance, imagination, and emotion. So when all this stuff comes up, and you can imagine like when you're in shock, you're in a trance, it's all just programming into the unconscious. And there's going to be some meanings there that might not be helpful. So you see people that have an experience and then they develop a phobia, or they develop like an inability to do something, or the unconscious mind then won't let them have, do, or be something that they really consciously want. And they're like, why can't I can never seem to get this in my life? So the sympathetic nervous system's always activated in a traumatic event in the past. So if that's been hyper aroused and it's never closed the loop, it's not been switched back down or re-regulated. So what actually happens is, because the unconscious mind stores our memories in a timeline, or if I'm in timeline from past to future, then if it hasn't close the loop, put that into long-term memory, then if in actual fact it's not being stored in sequential order. So the unconscious mind actually is in the state where you could be in the kitchen frying an egg, and your unconscious mind just happens to stumble upon this thing that hasn't been put into any time. If it's not been stored in the Gestalt file in the memories, then it's literally happening now. It's happening now. So that's where you get these people, and you know it yourself, if you've got anxiety, where you're having a panic attack, or your anxiety levels are rising and you just need to get out of there. So on top of that, you've got your identity. Like if somebody has experienced things that were unsafe, or what's the word I'm looking for, kind of like where it's putting you down, where you're powerless and helpless and whatever, then your own identity as a human being, and the power levels that you have, the control levels, how you get what you want and what you need, because we all have needs, and the 6 core human needs, and the first 4 we will literally do anything to get. And I mean, that's like love and connection and variety and significance and stuff like that, and we will do everything we need to do to get that. And that's why you see teenagers, joining gangs or all that sort of stuff, because there's no ethical response. We'll do the most ethical thing that's available to us, but we also will do if there's nothing ethical available, we'll do whatever needs to be done. So how do we switch all this stuff off, get our identity back, and be able to feel like we've got power and control over our future, so that we're not reliving this trauma, or it's not part of who I am? And one thing that has been really brought to my awareness and attention is how much our emotion is stored in the cells of our body, and it comes out in illness and pain and discomfort and inflammation and all that kind of stuff. And I know this from me. I mean, 2002, I managed to manifest cancer into my body after going through a horrific separation in a relationship, and like that was following on from past trauma in past relationships, and then past trauma in other childhood stuff. And so like at some point this stuff that's there, that we've pushed to the back of the cupboard, that we don't want to deal with, or we don't know how to deal with, is more the point. Because let's face it, if we knew how to deal with it, we would. But like just going back and wallowing in it or pulling it out and having to relive it isn't beneficial, and it's not enjoyable. It's actually re-traumatizing. So because our unconscious doesn't know the difference between real and imagined, every time you go in and tell the story, you're re-experiencing. So it's just a re-trauma. So I'd highly recommend, do not go in and re-traumatize yourself by reliving the memories, unless you're doing it in a process which is going to free you from those physically trapped emotions in your cells. So all any emotion wants, and you can try this yourself, is to be acknowledged and experienced and released. So for example, I don't know if you've had this where you've been super angry, but what you're not saying, hey, I'm angry, you're saying, why are you such a, and you always do this, and like it might be just an argument with your parent, with your partner or whatever. It's like, well, if you just did this and this wouldn't happen, and well, how dare you speak to me like that, or whatever's coming up for you. But in actual fact, what's really underneath it is, I feel so hurt, and I feel so unsupported, and I feel so angry, and I feel so this. And when we actually speak those things, and we say what the actual name of the emotion is and acknowledge it, a little part of it says, oh, I've been seen, I've been recognized, I've been acknowledged. So that's just something that's, helpful. But in essence, that energy of that emotion, it goes right through your body. I know when I'm angry or upset or something really powerful, like I can feel it rushing through my whole body and coming into my arms and so forth. So for that to be like acknowledged and felt, experienced and released, and that there's somatic therapies that can do that. So sitting with some trauma, like if you don't have a memory, if it's before you were 7 and you can't remember, but there was something there, just sitting in your body and being aware of what's going on in your body. Because sometimes it's not safe to be in our body, we detach, we kind of dissociate from our body because it's not comfortable to feel. And this is where addictions come in. Like, I just can't be in my body and sit here, so I need to be either drinking, eating, popping pills, smoking weed, playing pokies, having sex, doing something, even working, like work, keep myself so busy so I don't have to feel the stuff that's going on in my body. Because while my conscious mind might not be aware of it, but my unconscious will be, because the unconscious runs the body. So it's like we can check out, keep ourselves distracted. So nervous system, unconscious programming, identity, our emotions, all the stuff in the past. But essentially what needs to happen to put it behind you is to get it filed into long-term memory, into that like timeline gestalt thing, so that it's no longer like on your desktop. So imagine you've got a desktop and then you've got a filing cabinet. It needs to go in the filing cabinet, get off the desktop. It's not who you are. And how you can tell if you've got something on your desktop is if it comes up, like, if it's there, if it's not away, filed up. Yeah, Tracy, keep ourselves distracted. And look, I'm guilty of all this stuff too. I'm not coming at you from up here. I'm coming at you like from here. This is just happens to be like my obsessive compulsive. I don't have obsessive compulsive disorder, but I'm obsessed with getting the understanding and the knowledge and the tools to free us and free everybody from these debilitating situations and emotions and operating ways, methods that keep us stuck. And it's a repeat pattern. Whatever you don't heal, you will repeat. So it's like, divorce this guy, go off to, find a better future, a better life, and you'll find yourself at some point with an identical emotional experience. Like, yes, it won't be the same person, it won't be the same story or situation, but the feeling will be the same. It will come back up because every emotion needs to be felt, experienced, and released. And so I guess the other thing that the unconscious needs to know is I'm safe, it's over. And remember, I said powerlessness. This is a huge thing. It's a huge thing. It's because when you're feeling powerless, you are helpless and you no longer have any control. So if you think about people that go into some behaviors where they're trying to gain control, like whether it's over, food, or it's in relationship, or it's something. Do you know what I mean? There's always like, how many times have you felt that you're doing something because it gives you more control? So power, knowing you're safe, knowing it's over. Now, how do we tell the unconscious mind that it's over? Well, it has to experience a conclusion. So it's like watching a movie and you got to here and you never know how it ended. So therefore, it's always stuck in your head that, like, oh, I don't know what happened there, or how did this finish, or there's no closure or resolution. And that's why they talk about things like a grief cycle, like where you go through a cycle and you come out the other side. And so they've done a load of studies on happiness, for example, right? So happiness is an internal state. They've done happiness things like, okay, so measuring people before they won lotto and after they won lotto, before they lost somebody significant in their life, to after, like, it's obviously there's a couple of years gap in between, before they, whatever. So your happiness level does not change once you've processed through something. So even if it's extremely traumatic, if you have processed it properly. So if you were not happy before, you won't be happy after. If you were happy before, you will be just as happy after you've processed everything. So moving forward with our life is 100% possible, but not just moving forward how you were before, but moving forward in a better way. Because remember, happiness and satisfaction and joy and calm and peace, they're available to all of us. And we look for it outside of us. It's our natural instinct, because all of our senses are external, and it's really easy to lose the internal tuning that we have, the internal connection to what's going on in our body and how our emotions are feeling. And how many times are we somewhere and an emotion starts to come up and we just shove it down because, like, you don't want to show that emotion, like show that. And some of the most beautiful people that I've dealt with, and like clients, friends, whoever, are people that really are so comfortable with their emotions. The minute that they come up there, they can like express them so naturally, because all emotions are natural, even anger, even all the yucky stuff that we don't like to feel. But I guess it's hard to show vulnerability if you're already in a powerless, trauma bind situation, I guess. So sometimes we put walls up around our heart or around our vulnerable spaces, and that then stops us getting benefit from, like, things like therapy. Because if you're always got that wall around you protecting you, you're never going to get anywhere with what you're doing. So, okay. The unconscious learns through, like I said, trance, imagination, emotion, and repetition. The unconscious needs to know, and the body, and the unconscious runs the body, I'm safe and it's over. Yeah, we shove it down. Food comes to mind. And we do, like, emotional eating. It's like a catchphrase. I'm an emotional eater, as people will say, or, that's just so true. So emotions there's never, you can never run from this stuff. You can never hide from this stuff. It will come in some way, in some shape, in some form in our life until it's been processed. And then you go even further, and I wasn't going to go here, but then we go into the generational stuff. So if I don't heal it, I don't deal with it, then off it goes to the next generation. And that can be as simple as the way I show up in my day to my kids, the way I handle a situation, the way I express myself, the way I verbalize my thoughts. Like, everything's passing on. Even if it wasn't passed on genetically, it's passing on in the, that thing that says nurture versus nature. So you've got the nature part is the actual genetic predisposition, and then the nurture part is the part that we learn through our environment and stuff. So yes, it is possible to put our past behind us. Yes, it is 100% possible, but we need to first acknowledge it being in the past and acknowledge that it is not who we are. A lot of times, and this came up in a conversation the other day, people say my anxiety. Yes, so my anxiety, because I have anxiety, and my anxiety, my depression, my PTSD, I have PTSD. And so there's so much in our language that identifies as if we own something and it's part of us. So what about my happiness and my joy, and I am joyful and I am happy and I am free and I am powerful and all that sort of stuff. Language is important, but you can't just say, you can. Well, what I'm saying is, you cannot just make one statement once and then it affect your life. Like I said, repetition from the unconscious mind is a really, really big factor, and the imagination and the emotion. So when you speak something repeatedly with a whole stack of emotion, and you put some trance in it and some imagination, you can do wonderful things. So there's lots of structured things. And if you have got a past that is bothering you, haunting you, is heavy to carry, is not letting you move on, then I highly, highly recommend that you reach out and have a chat, and I'd be able to talk you through what options are available. Because what I have found is it may be possible, but it hasn't been possible for me that I know of. Working on yourself involves other people, and that's just something that I found when I try and do a process on myself. I might get a little bit of benefit, but I get so much more benefit when I'm working with another person. And there's that back and forth, because I've got my conscious mind, I've got my unconscious mind, and I've got my body, and I've got my emotions. But when you get another entity outside of you to be able to guide and instruct and ask the questions, that's when like real stuff happens. Even just asking the questions is really, really helpful. So I hope that that's been helpful to you to understand what's going on in why it's hard to put this stuff down. It does cause us to feel weighted down. I always think about life like a box, like a human beings rather. Like we have this like box that represents us, and we put all our pretty stuff on the outside and all the crap's on the inside, and you've got to carry that box. And it might be heavy, and it's like you wonder why anyone would carry all this weight with them when they could just put it down. Like most of our trauma does not belong to us. Typically, most of our trauma does not belong to us. And when you think about abuse from another person, or trauma from another person, or horrible things that happen involving situations or events or people, those things can definitely be put down. But what ends up happening is, if you don't put them down, you then start to hurt yourself. And when you're hurting yourself, when you're the person in your life that's hurting you the most, how can you get away from that? How can you move away from that? So the only reason anybody ever does that, anybody ever hurts themselves, is because they haven't dealt with the past to begin with. So one really common thing is self-harm, and that, like that, to be at the point where that is relieving, there's stuff that needs to be put down. And it just breaks my heart when I read people, where they're at that point, and I feel like I just want to take you and hug you and help you, but we can't go and help anybody else, because for you to put your stuff down, you need to be ready to open the box. You need to be ready to put that stuff out, throw it at the wall and say, get the hell out of my life. You don't belong here. I don't need you anymore. And I am done with you. Get out. And for that to be done. So have a beautiful weekend. And I hope you're all happy. Hope you're all feeling good. If you're not feeling good, Tracy and I are both here. I would love a DM. Happy to engage, talk, support, help, whatever anyone needs. Bye for now.